I'd like to introduce a man that has been instrumental in wrecking my life, Mr. Bruce Macgregor.
Hey John, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. And I think our history goes back to the 80s.
Yeah.
At Colchester Arts Centre, where I was, I managed a bookshop.
Yeah.
But also, we there was an age-old problem that the bands have had to deal with. Either they hired the venue and they lost money, or the venue paid them money and the venue lost money. So I put together a thing called double exposure, where we put two bands on and we paid them a basic amount so their transport was covered. And we put by the PA, and then we did the door split on the rest. And I believe this part of your existence that you've been in denial of since then. You're in a band called Tender Lugers.
Oh Christ! Yeah, this is true. Yeah, we weren't part of your sort of web, were we? At that time?
No, I think you did a double exposure. I know that because I always bought a few singles from the band, and I have in my warehouse somewhere a few Tender Lugers singles because they never sold from my bookshop. No one ever bought them.
There's loads out there, yeah, in second-hand bins. Yeah, that's true.
No, I have them as a treasured part of my collection.
God, was that the first coming together sort of thing, was it?
Well, it's the first I can remember.
Right.
There's obviously we've crossed paths, and then sort of around that same time, where we actually probably became conscious of each other, was the venue for Ipswich.
I was going to say, yeah, that's my first recollection. Yeah.
So, and
because that was that must have been sort of 86, 87, was it? That's
but yeah, 86, 87, 88, 89, late 80s.
Yeah. Well, no, it was. I think Vic started must have been mid 80s because the radio started in 89, and that was one of the main positive outcomes from the Vic, because we'd been putting on gigs, up to sorting out the radio.
Yes, I think probably my main involvement was turning up at the meetings at the county hotel.
Yeah, I remember that. And then you and Graham used to squat in the old Tower Street as well, didn't you? The old
theatre.
They let us have a key to that place.
Oh yeah, I probably arranged that.
Yeah, probably did.
And because I had Rose had been involved in the theatre,
right?
And so it would have been through Rose.
Yeah.
Which was Tower Street Theatre, which was an amazing place. Mm-hmm. Which, when it existed as theatre, the only way you could get from the left-hand stage to the right-hand stage without going across the stage was to go out, exit stage left, go down the corridor in the back, which was open air. So if it was snowing, you came back in covered in snow. And so we did things there. And that first radio broadcast, which was amazing, was from Christchurch Park.
Yeah.
On Ipswich Music Day, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. It was. We had a trailer in the park, so we had the reggae group. Oh, what the hell?
It was Joe Warrior.
Joe Warrior, of course, and KMC and everything. You were involved with Kevin, weren't you?
Indeed. Who now lives in Vegas.
Yeah. So I guess you would have sorted out all the live bands on the back of the truck.
Yes, yeah, I was probably responsible for that.
Yeah.
So
and then Graham sorting out the broadcast.
And I did my first broadcast from there. But it wasn't called Trains, Planes, and Road Trips, but it was a precursor to that.
Right. Yeah.
And I was also doing storytelling in the park for that one of my early storytelling gigs.
And that was that was that was our first radio broadcast, and and Graham always maintained that was the first live community radio broadcast. in the country as well. I don't know whether that's true or not,
but I like to think of it as such.
Yeah. No, I mean they were fantastic broadcasts. They'd only give you sort of like a weekend license in those days, but would take that caravan in the park, have the live music as well, and then sort of go for sort of 24/7 for the weekend, and it was just such a buzz.
But then we never got, because of Norwich got the venue, Cambridge got the venue. We were about to get venue when rate capping came in, and we thought the councils were coming in because I was at that meeting, and we thought they were coming in to tell us we had the venue, and they came and told us why we were not getting the venue. So we carried on with the occasional radio licenses, which is when the shows started coming together properly. My shows started coming together, and we did it up in Castle Hill Community Centre, Sorrel House Mews,
Murrayside, Sorrel Horse Mews. So, Castle Hill was where it started.
Yeah,
and because they went from sort of weekend licenses to month long.
Yes,
as well. Although there were plenty of people who were doing pirate stuff, in between.
Absolutely, of which I wasn't, only because I didn't have the equipment. But I remember there was some great sort of broadcasts we did. I remember when Hugh Masekela, who was sort of the great liberation, the South African trumpet player, that was in exile in New York for most time, but he was sort of Nelson's Mandela's personal. And he did his Sounds of Freedom tour, which is just after the changes in South Africa. And he did his Sounds of Freedom tour, which was full of every band leader from South Africa. So it's fantastic musicians, and they were on at the Leisure Centre at Colchester, and Imani, the Paul Surrender, Imani came down with me, and we recorded on a Ewer tape recorder, which was the old sort of the reel-to-reel tape recorder, an interview with Nelson Mandela, not Nelson Mandela, Hugh Masekela, and his I remember his manager coming in and saying, there was some important person wanted to see him. He said, no, I'm talking to a community radio, which is far more important than everything else. And and then I kind of asked him advice at the end of the thing, saying, what are we going to do now? We know the changes have happened in South Africa. Before that, we knew what to do. We could boycott Shell or whatever it was, Barclays. But now what do we do? He said, all you can do is see through the smoke screen. And I think that's current now. All we can do is see through the smoke screen. And we put that, and then we broadcast it on this fantastic. And I watched him on some late night arts program on television. Our interview I thought was far superior because he was able to go into lots of stuff he wanted to talk about. So and there was the radio, I think, was massively opened up stuff in Ipswich, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely, but I mean, there was such diverse communities who hadn't had a voice before. We had a Gypsy and Roma traveller program as well, and a gay program, lesbian program. Asian, the black community, was hugely represented. Wouldn't get anywhere near Radio Suffolk, any of those people. Although, I mean, Mervyn and Dawn, who started with us on the radio, eventually did get a show on, years later on Radio Suffolk, when they realised that, there was a diverse community sort of locally. And so that was always something I felt particularly proud of, that, people like Dawn and Mervyn started with us and then went on.
I think so. So where that runs is that you could run a program. There was no one telling you how to run a program. I tried to run a poetry program, and it failed miserably because I was supposed to ask people to send their poems in, And I'd done it for the BBC, and then this was an extension of that because they got rid of me because I kept trying to write political stuff, and I had a weekly thing in on Radio Essex, but the but you could say what you liked on with it, as long as you were within the rules of what was acceptable before 9 o'clock in the evening. You could pretty well say what you liked, and you could lie. I loved radio because you could lie. I kept saying you could create, or you could create these imaginary places spontaneously, whatever came into your head. I remember sitting up at Castle Hill Community Centre when we were there, and I was trying to encourage people to send in poetry. So I said, there are lorries pulling up outside, big trucks pulling outside. The drivers are leaping out of they're running up the stairs with their brown paper envelopes with poems scrawled on the back to burst into a studio. And you'd believe it because you'd be saying it.
Yeah, so everybody was totally on board.
It was that kind of thing. And of course, once we got the building, that was but before that he's had some very respectable jobs. He's the punk in the suit, and so he had a very respectable job with Anklet Action, and this was when the local television regional television had to have a community aspect. It was written into their charter, I believe.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it was not compulsory, they got rid of it.
Yeah.
But during that time,
cut back.
we were Bruce was asked to put together, be part of a encouraging recycling. This is before there was much recycling going on at all, and we had a thing called Slim Your Bin, which actually won prizes, didn't it?
Did it? Yeah, your memories were better than mine.
So that was
I'm sure it did. That was brilliant.
And Bruce thought, we'll get John. He's completely bonkers. I mean, why you would do this for a respectable television station, to write a play and take it round to encourage recycling. And so I wrote this play, which I rehearsed on a traveller's site, a totally illegal traveller's site up in Norfolk, and we built up. I had fire eaters, fire jugglers, and all sorts of things.
Yeah, unfortunately, they set a small child on fire at one of the road shows.
That was in Cambridge.
Yeah, it was.
Yes,
yes, we remember it very well.
Milton
yeah,
Park.
That one particularly stood out.
Yeah.
But move quickly on.
I think it was fine.
No. It's fine.
Only charred a little.
We were near Admiral.
Yes. Yes. So we went around about 40 towns, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a number of those road shows. We did it several years.
Yes, we did. We did that one. And then we decided that it was very restrictive, just having a 20-minute show. So we invented characters and all the rest. So we had Mr. and Mrs. Plastic is Fantastic, when we were trying to reduce the plastic bags and so forth. Yeah. And then I forgot what we called them. They were the respectable, really respectable couple that we actually invented. It was with Sandra Hall from
Birmingham. Yeah, that's great.
And to actually take the mickey out of the county set, and they loved it. They didn't like Mr. and Mrs. Plastic is Fantastic because we were going around. I mean, it's obvious we were being ironic. And we go around. We're there. There'd be Bruce and all the people up at the back with their nice, beautiful stand with all the leaflets on, trying to get people to reduce their plastic bags. And we're going. We're here to give the other side of the argument. plastic is fantastic. You can't go round the field in the country without seeing a bit of plastic. I mean, it's only been around for think what it's done in 100 years. And people took it very. I mean, I was dressed as a woman, and Sandra was dressed as a man with a little moustache, and they took us totally seriously. And people kept coming up to us and saying, and thinking it was appalling. So we had to drop those characters, and then Albert and Gloria. Albert and Gloria.
Yeah.
So, and they were amazing. And in Northampton, I remember with Albert and Gloria that Sandra couldn't do it. And we got this young, we got a much younger Gloria. But the council workers it was in Northampton, I'm afraid, took it totally seriously and thought we were a couple. And so she was in a wig and everything. And she mentioned that she was just talking to council workers and mentioned that I'd been Tarby had booked me for doing for performing at the Millennium Dome, because Tarby did all the sort of stuff around not in the big ring, but in the centre bit, in the bit round the edge. And they said, "Did you go with him, dear?" And she said, and so it was obvious. Obvious they thought we were a couple. And then she said, "He's a poet, you know." And they said, "Oh, that's all right." So obviously it's all right for poets to there was no problem once it was a poet having this young lady. So we did all that. I mean, in the end, you were sending us out to like Gloucestershire and places with we had what was it? That was it. Get Sorted, I think, was the name of the Gloucestershire one. Yeah, but it all came through you. And then we had to Hertfordshire had.
So you got another contract?
Yeah, but you passed
another TV company. Christ, yeah. I didn't know that.
No, it wasn't another TV company. It came through you. It was whatever there was, or the councils. Anyway, it was your fault. And we did, and then the one in Hertfordshire was definitely yours.
Oh yeah. That's still our region.
Where we had to get people to fill in a questionnaire on what they would prefer. Would they like a proper recycling centre, or did they want an incinerator? And it's really difficult to get people in these really respectful Hertfordshire towns to sort of engage. And there was one where we were trying to get people to go upstairs, and it was really difficult. So Sandra and I stood in the middle of the high street in I forget what, Radlett or somewhere, and we said. And we just talked like we were council officials, going, we could put the incinerator there where that church is. We could knock that church down and put the incinerator there. And people were looking very shocked. And they don't like that down here. We'll pop upstairs and fill in it. So, and the last one we did for you. Oh, we did cancer. That was
Clued Up on Cancer.
Clued Up on Cancer.
Yeah.
And I was going to very seriously. And they said, "No, we want it funny." I'm thinking, thanks, Bruce. You know, like, how do you make cancer funny? And you never know who you're meeting in the street. The thing was, with all the street stuff, you didn't know whether someone had been just diagnosed or whether they just come across and someone died or something. So in the end, we used foolhardies. We used the clowns. And I invented clown doctors. There's a lot of clown doctors now, but so there's people in white coats with big clown boots on, and they could go into all those taboo areas. So that was your fault as well. Thank you.
That works well. You're welcome.
Thank you. And the last one was on food waste, and we did we did a couple on food waste.
Yes, that was probably all with the Slim Your Bin recycling thing. That
was all that we built. We built a set on the back of a 1-ton truck or something, and we had a set on the back of that, which was again with Sandra, and I had to buy. I remember it was really difficult to get that artificial grass in those days, which I wanted as a lawn on the back of the truck. And then we did one where cutting down. Oh, that was to encourage people to go for the composting.
The composting, that was all linked to that, yeah.
And then there was the cutting down on waste, where we went round and talking about the amount of waste. So I got a television set and built a little front room that we took round, and a fridge, minimalism, and sort of television, a table, and a fridge. It was really difficult to get hold of a scrap fridge, and that was that almost went back to the beginning. I did that as a little play. I think that we a two-hander. But so there was all that.
That was, yeah, Christ, you know, your memory's better than mine, man. I mean, that was several years then, wasn't it? Through, you know, all the recycling stuff through to the cancer thing. That was several years.
Yeah.
Going out on the road, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it kept me alive for a while. But it was great, and then and that was so that crossed over to. I remember that I forget the last one. I think was the BBC. There was one that the BBC did.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, after we'd left that, like you were saying, you know, after sort of Anglia got rid of all their sort of like social commitments, which they're allowed to do, we did some work with the BBC, didn't we?
Yes.
I can't remember what that was.
I can't remember. I know I behaved appallingly, and you told me off.
Yeah,
that was the day of the London bombings, and no one knew at the time why everyone was uptight, and of course it all became obvious afterwards. But that was in Chelmsford. For which I need to apologise now, and I apologise live for my behaviour on that day.
It's fine. It's to be expected.
And by that time, we got you and Graham, the moving force behind it, had got the point going. The CSB Media Clubhouse,
yes,
which well, in its early stages, I was very much involved with, because it was I could get an office I could fill up with junk.
Yeah. No, that was brilliant. I always remember, because we had. Do you remember the Junction coming over from Cambridge?
Yes.
Coming over. So, you know, we wanted to sort of learn from them. We wanted to do something similar, and that they couldn't bloody believe it. They thought it was like some Amsterdam squat sort of coming over. This is like, you know, supposedly properly funded, you know, sort of community project. But, you know, I think they took one look at your office and sort of, you know, got this idea of what the hell we were doing, you know, and which it was, you know, you were an integral part in those days. And
Ipswich Open Arts Forum.
That was all part of it, and getting all those people down from those artists who were doing stuff with BT. Do you remember that? And they came and exhibited all that digital art, and that was in the early, you know, before we started, you know, actually doing stuff, you know, projects and helping people. You know, there was just loads of space, and it was a really good time. It was very free, and loads of stuff happened.
Yeah, it was great.
It was in those days.
I virtually lived in the building.
Yeah.
And but because I mean, over the time, you know, but that's all you know, carried on from the Vic campaign. I remember, you know, I mean, I suppose my main bit was sort of being gobby. I mean, during the, you know, at the big gigs, I'd do the speech. I'd do a speech, wouldn't I? You know, when we had, what was the one in the Caribbean Centre with?
Yeah, and obviously, you know, you're sort of very good at that. But also, you know, another strand was CSV, you know, as well, because you were one of the first. And although, you know, we were at sort of Anglia, we were doing the community radio, went to the BBC, it was always with CSV. You know, we were never, you know, employed by Anglia or whatever. You know, it was always with the charity. So, you know, there was a link there.
So I was one of the original volunteers within a couple of years of it starting.
Yeah, which is amazing.
And so I remember meeting Alec Dixon, who was the founder. And he was always very much in. I mean, I was a 17-year-old when I met him, but he always thought the youth should take the lead. So if you came up with an idea, he'd let you work it, and he kept that pretty well as the thread right through. I mean, the more bureaucratized it came, I don't want to say anything, but it was, the more difficult it was to maintain that. But it's his original vision was that, and I think you managed to keep that going, because whoever came in the door with an idea, it was like, well, the media clubhouse tried to make that idea work.
Yeah. And then that came from you, that came from Graham, and that came from Peter Leach, as well. So you're sort of like a triumvirate. And all of you, were sort of a bit off kilter, and alternative, and activists, and that was great, and that was exciting. I think that's what attracted me to all you guys. And although I had to front stuff with Anglia and the BBC, what was going on behind the scenes was hopefully supporting what we're going off. Not only you, I was like with your sort of wizard's den. There was bloody Peter with his dog, bloody pissing and shitting everywhere, as well, and Graham just sort of letting everybody in, and say come on, we'll give it a go, which is great.
And the great bit there was before before everyone could get internet on their mobile phones, we had all the computers in the foyer. So, and Ipswich then was a dispersal centre for asylum seekers, and so we had something like 40 nationalities coming in and keeping in touch with home through the internet, and they felt, because there was no barrier, there was a real welcoming. And of course, some of those groups started their own their own stuff, like the Kurdish Society.
A lot of Kurdish guys kicking up, including a lot from Halabja, and we'd always have the Halabja commemorations as well at the clubhouse, which were always very moving.
Yeah. So I remember there was a photograph, had a big photograph of them, a poster photograph of them dancing at May Day. And when they heard I was going to America, and they asked me if I would give this to them, because like they said, we know it's about the oil, but actually Saddam killed our parents, because some of them were from the villages that were poisoned. The painter, the artist guy.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Shaham. Yeah, it was from the village that was gassed. So they said, would I give this to someone in America? And I'm thinking, well, who do I know that was that's not in the anti-war brigade in America? But then I remember there was an ex-colonel who I met when I first went out to Texas, and he ran the sort of, he was retired, Vietnam War and stuff, but he ran the Austin Purple Heart, so the equivalent of the veterans. So I gave that to him. So I took that photo from Ipswich Music Day of the Kurdish guys and of the dancers, and it's sitting in the Austin Purple Heart thing, place. So, and of course both sides appreciated it. So there was so it's been a kind of that's pretty well it, isn't it? Then I
I mean, I think you could say a bit more about the music stuff, because I think that was so important, in the early Vic days, and because although I came late to the Ipswich scene now, I was always aware of the Addicts, and driving them around, the Stupids as well. And you'd always been a name, when I was starting to sort of turn up in Ipswich and stuff, and then from that developed all those early gigs, at Vic, at the ICA, which is now rubble, which is shocking, that was always loads going on there. And John Peel as well. John Peel was a really important part of that. He'd come to those gigs as well, and he came in on the radio as well, and supported the radio in the early days up at Castle Hill as well.
And the continuation of that was, of course, when they were trying to get the John Peel Centre going after John's death, and we brought in his widow, Judith,
Sheila,
brain dead, Sheila, and oh God, guy who used to run Bohemia down that died.
Oh, Dickie
Moles. Sheila and I sat there because we were trying to get people to vote, because there was a BBC television thing where they could vote for something, an old building to be restored and funded, and that was in an old railway shed, wasn't it? And so we were trying to get people to vote in. So we did the whole radio program with Sheila, with Dickie and Sheila to do. It was, and there was, so this has been the thread through really from the early days with the Addicts, and I mean goes right back to Black Ivory, which is before Jar Warrior.
Right, way before my time.
Yeah, and the first, so and then promoting down the Manor Ballroom, which is again before you got there. But the thread that you're right, that music thread runs right through, and the reason I suppose you all asked me to get involved with Vic or something, or why I dropped in, was because of that involvement sort of for the 10 years before, if not longer, with the Ipswich music scene.
Yeah, you know, and the music was always so important to the radio, you know, because the music, you know, we were playing, you know, from those early, you know, it wasn't heard, and yeah, it was obviously before the internet, you know, and everything, and it was just wasn't heard anywhere, especially, you know, with that local spin on it as well. And you know, and I think that's been vitally important, you know, including here now in this place. You know,
yeah, we would say that who the baby gave birth. The media centre gave birth to this place, which is where we're recording now. Which is
well, I mean, Joe. Well, there was Pat Alexander, who set up Soundback first. You know, who was sort of big on reggae and stuff, and then Joe took this over, and then, you know, when we had to leave CSV because of austerity and the cuts, you know, and everything was getting sucked into London, you know, we rocked up here, and I think, you know, we've contributed our bit as well, and now we've got the venue, the sort of radio studio. Joe set up the recording studio, but yeah, no, that lives on, you know, from the clubhouse days.
There's still a bit of me sitting in Ipswich. Still a bit of legacy.
but also, I mean, you know, Out Loud are doing fantastic. They've got St Stephen's Church now is a gig event, and now I'm trying to get the Baths, which was
in my youth, which was Bluesville,
with Ron and Nanda.
Yeah, Ron and Nanda, that had the Manor Ballroom in the summer, wasn't it? And the bars were only open in the were they?
So you were around then?
Yeah. So I used to. That's where I started getting involved in music in Ipswich, as audience.
And now it's coming back, you know, because well, yeah, there's gigs, you know, on there, and you know, they're trying to sort of tap up Ed Sheeran to, you know, divest, you know, some of his millions into, you know, supporting that, because that's the other thing. Ed Sheeran, you know, when we were doing music in the park at the clubhouse, Ed Sheeran played on our stage. He used to go on ICR, to go on Ozzy's program and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that will
and that park side of music, well,
full circle.
From the not so much Ipswich Music Day. Ipswich Music Day, they asked me to run a poetry thing, which I did. But before that, on way back in the early days of May Day, it was just the fun fair and the stalls and the political stalls. And I kind of suggested that they should bring in music, because the music venue, music and the left were being really slammed by Thatcher, and so I can claim some responsibility for a little little subversion.
Yeah.
Yes. Could you get a bit more, Bruce, about where we are and what you do now?
Yeah, so we set up Ipswich Community Media about 8 years ago. as I was just saying, that was when I'd worked for CSV, for sort of many years, but once the Tories got in 2010 and started all the cutting, that really affected the charitable sector really bad, and then that impinged on us. Basically, for many years we were just allowed to do our own thing, with the clubhouse, with Anglia, and all that. But then as things got tighter, more and more funds got sucked into London, more and more control with London, and we thought, sod it, we'll set up our own thing. And so all the English work with the migrant communities, we set up ISCRI, Ipswich Suffolk Council Racial Equality, who John was also involved with, and then all the sort of music and media stuff we set up here at South Street Studios. And so we've been able to carry on that great work, sort of music and media for young people, tends to be young people, well, not exclusively. And then the English teaching for the sort of migrant communities, and John was it's been a thread through that. It all comes from those early 80s, mid 80s as well, and also that that music as the voice for different communities. That's been important to us massively all through those decades, and that's what we're still trying to do. And John, Graham, Peter, all the others, have made a really significant contribution. And so it goes, then passing the baton on, and then Joe and others will take it on, and and hopefully develop the town further. Which,
How do you guys feel about where we are now and what the future looks like, and particularly around local activism? Are you feeling optimistic, pessimistic? Is this a challenge, or is this like an opportunity?
Oh yeah, I saw that. It's sorry, I just but it's a massive challenge. Funding, funding's incredibly tough. But then I think great music, great art, often comes out. Those austere times. Punk, it was pretty shit. In those times. But I mid to late 70s, I view massively brilliantly. There was no money around. It was tough. It was gloomy. I was in Hume and Moss Side, at the time, but it was bloody exciting. Sort of going down to the factory was like taking your life in your hands. But bloody hell, it was bloody exciting. So sod it. It is tough, but there's always a way. There's always a gap in the pavement, that you can survive in. So, and as I say, what's happening with the bars and St. Stephen's is absolutely fantastic. And although it's tough, we'll just carry on. So.
And I think Ipswich is as an engine for the arts, because for decades it was ignored and people didn't know about funding and things. It was very much a do-it-yourself town. So a music, because every town has an art form. Music is. At one point, they counted the bands in Ipswich and the surrounding area, 180 bands in Ipswich, which was, and we never. Bruce, thank goodness, has managed to get funding, and there's a whole, and people like Cat Taylor that know how to, that actually work it a little bit. But for ages, it was very much, if you lost it on the door. And I can remember being, if I had to promote it anymore, I'd be living in a tent in the back garden, because I'd spend the housekeeping on what was on losing stuff. But it's always kept going, and it has been for a long time. Suffolk, if not Ipswich, as you go a few miles outside Ipswich to Blunderston, to Bilderston, and the whole of the Soho jazz scene had moved up there, 40, 50 years ago. So there's and the fairs, of course, which we crossed over.
Oh my God, the fair, bloody brilliant they were.
Yeah, and that was very much an East Anglian thing.
Yeah.
So and none of it was it was all done by arrangement, arranged with a farmer, it's always been a do-it-yourself area.
And Ipswich people often think, oh, yeah, what a shithole, crap. But then people come from outside and they can't believe, the music side, music scene, and what the hell's going on. And so, I think we are particularly lucky. And also, I think we've actually been world leaders in a couple of sort of, underground sort of movement, like hardcore with like Extreme Noise Terror. Napalm Death would come down here, all those really, and Dean and Phil, bless his soul, I think they're world leaders, and also drum and bass, as well, with people like Digital and Spirit and Photech, started making it, so I think those sort of harder, more sort of like industrial sort of sounds, I've always found, sort of welcome home, in Ipswich.
And the only credits I ever got on record covers were on the back of some of those bands where it go John the Van, because I drove most of them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did the American bases?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that was we've got a couple of minutes, but I think one of the things, and it's that Ipswich was particularly lucky in, was because we had a Caribbean community and there was an African American community out on the bases, and the two together produced some amazing funk and reggae stuff. We could have, for me, it had a lot of what Liverpool had in the 60s with taking stuff off the sales. Our only problems were too near London, so a lot of the bands had a sort of inferiority complex because of London.
There is a whole project kicking off about that, actually, which I need to talk to you about, but absolutely, Gino Washington, he was round here, his son was round here as well for a while.
I taught both two of his sons, Gino and Silky. Taught Gino at Stoke High School and Silky at Suffolk College. And they still, they still take me in to see their notebooks. Well, thanks, Bruce. You have been amazing.
No,
thank you. It's just just really, really nice to go through the back pages.
It's for the next 80 years.